Chapter 1. The Time Exploration Company. In an ambitious corner of the 21st century, the Time Exploration Company was etching its mark in the annals of humanity. The company was an innovative titan in the world of technology, harnessing the seemingly impossible science of time exploration. Their grand plan: to offer wealthy adventurers the thrilling chance to voyage into the past and experience history firsthand. Richard Lawrence, a billionaire with a heart full of wanderlust and the coffers to satisfy it, was the principal patron behind the Time Exploration Company. With his striking features and sharp gaze, Richard was an enigmatic figure whose life was dedicated to pushing the boundaries of reality. His fascination with the Titanic was widely known. The ship's tragic tale of opulence and disaster had fascinated him since he was a child. His impressive collection of Titanic memorabilia adorned the walls of his vast mansion, each artifact a testament to his obsession. Richard had always dreamed of exploring the real Titanic, not the one pieced together by historians, but the true vessel that lay silent and cold at the bottom of the Atlantic. He yearned to touch its rusting hull, walk its empty corridors, and imagine the sounds of laughter, music, and ultimately, despair that once filled its grand halls. When the Time Exploration Company announced its plan for the Deep Sea Ghost project, Richard was the first to sign on. The Deep Sea Ghost project was an audacious endeavor aimed at creating a cutting-edge submarine to descend into the deepest abyss of the Atlantic. The vessel was engineered to withstand extreme pressures, temperatures, and the passage of time. It was the brainchild of the world's finest maritime engineers and oceanographers, who worked tirelessly to bring the project to life. Accompanying Richard on this historic expedition was Thomas, a renowned history scholar who shared Richard's fascination with the Titanic, and Sarah, a brilliant technician, who ensured the smooth operation of the submarine. As the trio prepared for their journey, anticipation and tension hung in the air. The possibilities were thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. However, as the submarine approached the watery grave of the Titanic, the vessel suddenly lost contact with the surface. At the headquarters of the Time Exploration Company, panic set in as they lost all communication with the team. The world watched, breathless, as the news of the submarine's mysterious disappearance spread. The grand adventure had taken an unexpected turn. Little did they know, the real journey was only just beginning. Chapter 2. Into the Deep. The submarine's descent into the abyss was a journey into the unknown. The radio had crackled into silence, severing their link with the world above. Yet, within the confines of the Deep Sea Ghost, Richard, Thomas, and Sarah found themselves unscathed. Their hearts pounded in their chests, a cacophony of excitement and fear. The eerie glow of the submarine's exterior lights illuminated the ghostly remains of the Titanic, casting long shadows that danced upon the vessel's corroded hull. Richard, a natural-born leader, steadied his voice and cast a decisive look at his two companions. His hands clenched, white-knuckle, around the arms of his chair as he gave the order. "Sarah, I need you to focus on the comms. Thomas and I will proceed with the exploration." Sarah, her usual jovial expression replaced by one of solemn determination, nodded in agreement. With deft fingers, she set to work on the submarine's communication console. The small space was filled with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from the control panel. The technician was a figure of concentration, her brows furrowed in deep thought as she tried to reconnect with the surface. Meanwhile, Richard and Thomas prepared to venture into the wreckage. They donned their specially designed suits, their hands trembling slightly with anticipation. Richard's gaze was transfixed on the spectral image of the Titanic, his lifelong obsession now just a few meters away. His heart was a thunderous drum in his chest as he took a deep breath, the taste of filtered air filling his lungs. On the other hand, Thomas felt an odd sense of serenity amidst the palpable tension. As a historian, he had dedicated his life to studying the past, yet here he was, about to step foot on a relic of history. He felt the weight of the moment, and he knew he was about to touch a part of the past that no one else had in over 100 years. His hand lightly grazed the cold metal of the hatch, his fingertips tracing the patterns of rust and algae. With a final glance at Sarah, Richard and Thomas opened the hatch. The echo of the opening door filled the submarine, marking the beginning of their journey into the heart of the Titanic. The ghostly figure of the sunken ship awaited them, silent and still, a chilling testament to the power of the deep. Their adventure had truly begun. Chapter 3: The Wreckage. As Richard and Thomas entered the Titanic, they were met with an uncanny sight. The corridors, once expected to be filled with water and debris, were strangely dry and intact. The ship seemed to defy logic, standing grand and majestic as if untouched by the tragedies of time. There was a haunting tranquility that permeated the once lively chambers, a silent testimony of the vessel's erstwhile grandeur. Richard felt a chill run down his spine, not from the cold, but from the peculiar scenario unfolding before him. The ship was eerily immaculate, as if it had only just completed its maiden voyage. There was an unsettling familiarity in the meticulously polished wooden banisters and the elegant crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling. It felt as if they had stepped onto a vessel lost in time, suspended between the past and present. In contrast, Thomas was overwhelmed with curiosity. His historian's mind raced with questions, yet he found himself consumed by a sense of wonder and disbelief. His heart pounded in his chest as he touched the intricate carvings on the wall, half expecting his hand to pass through an illusion. Yet, the cold, solid feel of the wood only confirmed the reality of their situation. Meanwhile, on the surface, the rescue team dispatched a probe to locate the lost submarine. The spherical contraption whirred into life, diving into the depths with an urgent mission. Guided by the last known coordinates, it scoured the ocean floor, its beam of light piercing through the deep-sea darkness. The probe soon relayed images that sent a ripple of shock through the team. The shattered remains of the deep-sea ghost lay sprawled on the seafloor. Its once sleek exterior was mangled, evidence of a powerful internal explosion. Fear gripped the team, who were previously hopeful of a malfunction or miscommunication. The sight of the submarine's wreckage shifted their mission from rescue to recovery, and the search for the black box began. As Richard and Thomas navigated the uncanny interior of the Titanic, the surface team's grim discovery cast a stark contrast to their surreal experience. Unbeknownst to them, their venture into the past was shadowed by the wreckage of their future, buried in the Atlantic's chilling depths. Chapter 4: Uncertain Reality. The stark reality of their predicament began to set in for Richard and Thomas. The weight of their situation hung in the air, a chilling reminder of their isolation from the world. Their initial astonishment at the immaculate Titanic was gradually replaced by a sense of foreboding. As they returned to find their lifeline to the surface, their submarine was nowhere to be found. The harsh reality of their dwindling oxygen supply was a sharp contrast to the preserved beauty of the ship around them. Richard's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. The echo of his boots on the wooden deck was a stark reminder of the emptiness around them. His eyes swept over the elegant dining rooms and corridors of the Titanic, each detail an eerie reminder of its glorious past. He felt a strange sense of disconnect from the world, as if trapped in a chilling dream, the boundaries of reality blurring at the edges. For Thomas, the sight of the Titanic's preserved interior was a haunting paradox. The historian in him marveled at the sight, yet the survivor within him dreaded the implications. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up a piece of luggage, discarded haphazardly as if its owner had merely stepped away for a moment. It was a moment frozen in time, a memory preserved in amber. The galley was a spectacle of suspended animation. Pots and pans hung from hooks, their surfaces clean and untarnished. Plates of food lay untouched, their aroma still faintly lingering in the air. The sight was disconcerting, a stark contrast to the rot and decay one would expect in a ship that had spent a century beneath the sea. Despite their hunger, neither dared to touch the food. It was as if by consuming the food they would be accepting the twisted reality they found themselves in. The Titanic, once a symbol of human ambition and luxury, now stood as a monument to their solitude. Its preserved state was both their sanctuary and prison, a constant reminder of their uncertain reality. As they moved deeper into the ship, they clung to the hope of finding answers to their predicament, or perhaps a way back to their world. Chapter 5: The Mysterious Door. Venturing to the lowest levels of the ship, Richard and Thomas discovered something out of place in the ship's hold. Hidden behind a stack of old, untouched cargo crates was a door, unlike any other they had seen on the ship. It was ornately carved, decorated with a myriad of symbols and enigmatic writings that seemed out of place on a ship like the Titanic. It was a curiosity that gnawed at their sense of reality, further deepening the surreal atmosphere surrounding them. Richard studied the door closely, his fingers tracing the cool metal of the intricate symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. Thomas, too, was engrossed, pulling out his notebook and sketching the cryptic etchings, his historian's mind intrigued by the find. The strange writings seemed older, ancient even, and bore no resemblance to any language they knew. Behind the door was an ethereal spectacle that left them stunned. A curtain of water shimmered with soft, otherworldly light, creating an entrancing visual mirage. It hung in the air, an impossible scene defying the laws of nature, and yet there it was. They exchanged puzzled glances, their eyes reflecting the surreal radiance of the water curtain. Richard was the first to break the silence. With a strange mix of trepidation and curiosity tugging at his mind, he stepped towards the curtain. He hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the watery barrier. The idea of stepping through it was daunting, yet the allure of the unknown was irresistible. With a deep breath, Richard extended his hand towards the shimmering veil. He felt a cool sensation as his fingers met the watery surface, followed by a gentle pull, as if the barrier was inviting him in. Heart pounding in his chest, he cast a last glance at Thomas and stepped through, his form disappearing into the ethereal light. The mysterious door, once a mere anomaly on the ship, had become their portal into the unknown, opening up possibilities and fears that were beyond their wildest imaginations. As Richard vanished into the shimmering barrier, the Titanic's secret revealed itself, setting in motion events that would challenge their perception of reality. Chapter 6: Through the Veil. As Richard crossed the water veil, he was engulfed by a profound silence. He took a step forward and found himself standing in a corridor identical to the one he had just left. Yet, there was an intangible shift in the atmosphere. He felt a faint hum, a rhythm of life that was absent before. His heart pounded in his chest as he moved towards the deck. His footsteps echoed in the corridor, resonating with the ship's life pulse. He could hear a crescendo of distant voices and the faint clinking of dishes, a soundtrack of life that was strangely comforting. Richard felt a wave of disbelief washing over him as he stepped onto the deck. Before his eyes, the Titanic buzzed with life. The once empty deck was filled with elegantly dressed passengers, children running around, and crew members bustling about, preparing for the voyage. The air was alive with anticipation and excitement. He could hear laughter and chattering, the sound of life returning to the once lifeless ship. Dressed in his modern attire, Richard stood out among the crowd. His clothing, so ordinary in his time, seemed alien in the sea of period attire around him. The sight of him attracted curious, if not baffled, glances from passers-by. A few children pointed at him, whispering to each other, their faces lit up with intrigue. Even the crew members looked at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Despite the unfamiliar surroundings, Richard found himself captivated by the lively scene before him. The bustling crowd, the laughter, and the shared anticipation of an adventure. It was also deeply human. He felt a strange mix of fear, excitement, and wonder. He was a man out of time, a stranger in a familiar place. But for now, the joy of experiencing the Titanic in all its glory, alive and vibrant, was overwhelming. He was, after all, living his dream of being part of Titanic's journey, even if it was a reality he could hardly believe. Chapter 7: Discovery. Richard's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts as he stepped back through the shimmering veil. The scene before him shifted from the hustle and bustle of the Titanic's 1912 launch to the serene, silent interior of the Titanic at the bottom of the sea. The sudden silence felt heavy, a stark contrast to the lively energy he had just experienced. Without wasting a moment, he sought out Thomas, who was anxiously waiting for him. "Thomas," he panted, his eyes alight with an excitement Thomas had never seen before. "You won't believe what I've just seen." Thomas looked at Richard, his curiosity piqued by his enthusiasm. Richard, usually so calm and composed, was now flush with energy, his words rushing out as he attempted to explain his astounding experience. As Richard recounted his journey through the veil, Thomas's initial skepticism gave way to astonishment. 100 questions swarmed Thomas's mind, but the allure of the mystery outweighed the reservations of his historian's caution. He found himself agreeing to Richard's proposal to step through the portal together. "After you," Thomas gestured with a small, incredulous smile, still unsure whether to believe Richard's extraordinary claims. Taking a deep breath, the two men stepped through the portal together. The transition was smooth, the hum of life on the other side immediately noticeable. Their surroundings were identical, but the Titanic was no longer a silent shipwreck. It was a vibrant vessel teeming with life. Suddenly, they found themselves standing on the deck of the Titanic in 1912, the ship pulsating with energy. Passengers and crew members filled the ship, their voices a symphony of anticipation and excitement. Dressed in their modern attire, they attracted curious glances from the crowd, but their awestruck expressions mirrored the passengers' excitement. It was a sight they had never imagined they would witness. The reality of their situation began to sink in. They had stepped back in time, over 100 years into the past. Richard turned to Thomas, his eyes wide with excitement. "We're on the Titanic, Thomas, the real, living Titanic," he exclaimed. It's more amazing than I could have ever imagined." Standing side by side on the deck of the Titanic, surrounded by the echoes of the past, Richard and Thomas shared a moment of wonder and disbelief. They had journeyed not just to the depths of the ocean, but through time itself. It was a discovery that would challenge everything they knew about reality and their existence. Chapter 8: Crossroads. The surreal reality of their situation loomed large. Richard and Thomas stood on the threshold of the past. The Titanic's life-filled deck under their feet, the icy winds of the North Atlantic brushing against their faces. Two paths stretched out before them, equally obscure and brimming with uncertainties. To one side lay the familiar, the comforting vestiges of their timeline, now buried deep beneath the Atlantic waves, the remnants of their submarine and the time adventure they embarked upon, the potential of a rescue, however slim, their only tether to their world, their time. The other path led into the great unknown. The hustle and bustle of the early 20th century swirled around them, an era they had only read about in history books now pulsating with life before their eyes. Could they blend into this bygone world? Could they make a difference? The foreknowledge of the impending disaster was a heavy burden, filled with ethical conundrums and moral responsibilities. They stood on the precipice of a catastrophe, armed with the power to potentially rewrite history. The men exchanged a glance, their expressions a mirror of each other's apprehension and excitement. Their hearts echoed with the same silent questions. Could they abandon their timeline and leave behind the rescue that might or might not arrive? Could they plunge headfirst into this alien past and disrupt the natural course of events? And even if they chose to intervene, could they indeed prevent the Titanic from its destined tragedy? There was no instruction manual for time travelers, no guidebook for heroes of history. All they had was their knowledge, their instincts, and the hope that whatever decision they made, it would be the right one. History, as they knew it, hung in the balance. Richard, Thomas broke the silence, his voice barely audible above the steady hum of the crowd. "We have a decision to make." As the sun started to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows on the bustling deck, the two men stood side by side. The uncertainty of their predicament was daunting, the gravity of their decision monumental. The Titanic's journey had just begun. Its fate was yet to unfold. And Richard and Thomas, two men lost in time, stood at the crossroads of their destinies, the echoes of the future whispering in their ears. Their next steps could rewrite history. Or maybe they would simply chart the course of their futures. As the last rays of the setting sun glimmered on the ocean, the future remained a vast and uncharted expanse, its course guided by the decisions they were about to make. Their adventure was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Thank you for watching. You could download the vocabulary PDF below. To stay up to date on our future videos, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and let us know what you think in the comments below.